There is a budgetary mechanism called Reprogramming Authority. It appears in no statute you have read, no politician has ever run on it, and since 1921 it has allowed the executive branch to move billions of dollars between congressional programs without a single new vote. What you are about to understand, almost no one around you knows. Most people carry the same mental model of government spending. You elect representatives, they pass a budget. Agencies spend the money where Congress said to spend it. That is the civics textbook version. It stopped being accurate over 100 years ago. When Congress passes an appropriations bill, it funds broad categories: defense, health, transportation. Inside those categories are subaccounts called program elements and line items. The assumption is that the money stays where Congress put it. But embedded in nearly every appropriations bill, in language almost no one reads aloud on the floor, is a clause authorizing agency heads to move funds between those subaccounts internally, without a new vote, without a new law, often without a public record of any kind. That practice grew from the Budget and Accounting Act of 1921, the law that built the modern federal budget system from the ground up. Encoded in that law was an administrative necessity. Agencies needed flexibility. Emergencies happen. A weapons system runs over cost and another runs under. Rigid line item accounting would bring the executive branch to a halt. So agencies began shifting funds internally, notifying the relevant congressional committee and treating the notification as sufficient. No debate, no floor vote, no entry in the Federal Register. Just a letter to a committee staff director, and then the money moved. That letter became a procedure. The procedure became a norm. The norm became standard operating practice across 14 cabinet departments and dozens of independent agencies. At some point, it stopped being informal and became the actual system. In 1974, after Watergate, Congress passed the Congressional Budget Act and tried to reassert control. Reprogramming above certain thresholds, usually 15% of a program budget or $10 million depending on the agency, would now require what the law calls prior approval from the relevant Appropriations Committee. Prior approval sounds like a hard stop. It is not. The committee can object. It can write formal letters of disapproval, but there is no provision in the statute making that disapproval legally binding. Courts have repeatedly held that intra-branch budget disputes are not justiciable, a legal term meaning, beyond court authority to resolve. And here is the part that should actually worry you: it is completely legal. In 2019, the Department of Defense used this mechanism to reprogram $2.5 billion. That money had been appropriated to military personnel accounts, funds designated specifically to pay service members. The executive branch moved it to border wall construction. Congress had explicitly voted in the same fiscal year not to fund that construction. The House Appropriations Committee formally objected under the prior approval process. The agency proceeded anyway. The Supreme Court declined to block the transfer. No new law authorized the move. No new vote validated it. The expressed will of Congress was reversed by an administrative letter. Remember, no one voted for this mechanism. It accumulated. The effect on ordinary people is not abstract. Every time a program you depend on veterans' health services, rural infrastructure grants, public health emergency reserves, gets quietly drained mid-year to cover a priority the current administration prefers, this is the mechanism doing that work. No public announcement. No hearing. No recourse available in a court of law. Just a notification letter filed with a committee that has no legal power to refuse. You cannot repeal Reprogramming Authority because it does not exist as a single law to repeal. It lives inside the architecture of appropriations itself, scattered across agency regulations, OMB Circular A11, decades of committee report language, and informal interbranch understandings accumulated since 1921. Eliminating it would require redesigning the entire federal budget mechanism, account by account, agency by agency, across every appropriations subcommittee in both chambers simultaneously. And the committees that would have to act are the same committees that currently use informal prior approval as a source of quiet leverage over agencies. A hard prohibition would constrain them as much as it constrained the executive. They have no structural incentive to remove their own power, so the mechanism stays. Permanently, what that tells you about every other institution should give you pause. When we say Congress controls spending, we mean Congress controls the appropriation at the moment of passage. What happens to that money inside the executive branch, across a full fiscal year between the sub-accounts, through transfer letters filed with no public record, that is a separate system with its own rules. Those rules were not voted on. They accumulated through practice, normalized through repetition, and insulated through structural complexity until they became invisible. Every campaign promise about where the money goes is made inside a framework where the money can go somewhere else entirely, legally, quietly, and without your knowledge. The appropriation is the public version. Reprogramming is the real version. So the question worth sitting with is this: if the mechanism that determines where federal money actually flows is invisible to voters, unreachable through legislation, and untouchable by courts, how many other systems in this government are built exactly the same way? And what would it even mean to find them all?